Today, we are going to do planning part 1. And what are we going to learn in this? We will understand the concept of planning, its features and importance. What is planning? Each one of us plan. We plan for a future. That is planning. Failing to plan is planning to fail. It is very rightly said. So everybody should plan, and more so the business organization. So planning is nothing but setting objectives for the future and developing various methods of achieving it. For example, you might have planned something for business studies. Now you're studying business studies, so you must have kept some objective for yourself, some aim for yourself. Like, for example, you might be aiming to get above 95% marks. Now, just keeping an objective will not help you achieve it. You have to find ways of achieving it also. So planning involves setting objectives and developing appropriate course of action to be able to achieve it. Now, this diagram explains it very well. Planning bridges the gap between where we are and where we want to go. So, what you are today and what you want to become tomorrow, the difference between them can be achieved through proper planning. Now, let us study the features of planning. Planning has got 7 features. So, we'll do them one by one. First is planning focuses on achieving objectives. Now, I told you the first thing we have to do is set objective. If you go about studying any subject, first of all, you have to keep an objective in front of you. You have to set a goal. So planning actually helps us to set a goal so that we are able to achieve it. For example, a worker comes to work in an organization. The supervisor takes him to the machine and says, you start working on this machine and you have to make 10 units. So the worker has an objective that he has to make 10 units today. So when the objective is clear to him, then in that case, achieving it becomes easy. Suppose a worker was not told how many units he had to make, then he would have made 7 units or 8 units, and according to him, he might have done a good job. But the supervisor might not have been happy because the supervisor expected him to make 10 units. So setting objectives and goals makes planning purposeful. And if planning does not help in achieving of this goal, then it is of no use. So if the supervisor has told the worker to make 10 units and the worker still makes 5 units or 6 units, then what is the point in setting an objective for him? So that objective has to be achieved. So the first feature is planning focuses on achieving objectives. Then the second feature is planning is a primary function. If you start a new business or any new project, or maybe when you start studying, the first thing you have to do is to plan. All other functions, they come after planning. That is why planning is called the primary function and is also the base for all other functions. This is also called the primacy of planning. Now, all other functions are equally important. It's not that they're not as important as planning, but planning is the first function. Then the third feature is planning is pervasive. It is at all the levels and all type of organizations. We also plan. You are planning for your board exams. Everybody plans. So planning is being done by everybody, whether it's business organization or otherwise. It is not the exclusive function of the top management. Though the top management plans for the entire organization, but planning is done by all the managers. So the top management, they plan for the entire organization, and the middle management for their own department, and the lower level management who are just above the workers, they plan the day-to-day activities. So planning is called all pervasive. Then planning is continuous. It goes on and on. You can't say that, okay, I was studying for my half-yearly exam, now it's over, now I don't need to plan any further. You have to keep on planning. So next exam will be coming up, you have to plan for that. So this is said, planning is continuous. And planning is always prepared for a particular period of time. It is made for a particular period of time, maybe a month or a quarter. So when you make short-term plans, that is for less than 1 year, it's called a budget. And once that period comes to an end, then you need to again make another plan because the future conditions and the situations keep on changing. So the same plan that you made earlier may not now be applicable in the future. And this is called the planning cycle. So planning cycle basically means that a plan is framed, it is implemented, and it is followed by another plan. And like this, the cycle goes on and on. Planning is futuristic. Planning is always about the future. That is looking ahead and anticipating the future. And this future can be anticipated through forecasting. You can anticipate the conditions that might be there in the future. Like, for example, sales forecasting. So if you have to forecast about the sales, then you have to anticipate what might happen in the future and accordingly produce the goods. That is why planning is very important. Then planning involves decision making. So in planning, you have to choose from the various alternatives. If there are no alternatives, there cannot be any plan. If there's only one course that you have to take, then what will you plan? For example, at home, there's only rice, there's no flour. So you have to make rice only. Then what will you plan? Nothing. So planning presupposes the existence of alternatives. Without alternatives, there cannot be any planning. This is another feature of planning. Then planning is a mental exercise. It's all in the mind. Later on in the directing function, that it actually gets converted into action. But planning has to be done in the mind. So in planning, that is why the top management is mostly involved. Most of the decisions are taken by the top management because it involves a lot of foresight, intelligence, sound judgment, etc., which you get only after about 20 years of experience. And it is an activity of thinking rather than doing, and it requires logical and systematic thinking rather than guesswork. That is why planning is called a mental exercise. Now come to the importance of planning. From these features only we are getting the importance, and there are 6 importance. Planning provides direction. So in planning, we decide about the future today itself. So we are deciding in advance. So when you decide in advance, you get a direction for action. For example, that worker who came to work, so the supervisor told him you have to make 10 units. So the worker already knew in advance that he has to make 10 units. So he got a direction. So he knew how much should he make by half time and then how much more he needs to make. So planning provides direction to your work, and your work can be achieved properly. So if the objectives are very clearly stated, like the worker knew that he has to make 10 units, then doing the work becomes much easy. And each department has their own objectives, and departments and individuals, they have to work in coordination with each other, and therefore with proper planning only this can be achieved. For example, if the marketing department has been told to sell 3,000 television, then how will they sell if the production doesn't make 3,000 television? So production has to make 3,000 television. That means the purchase department has to purchase raw material for 3,000 television. So all the departments are interrelated, and therefore planning provides direction to each and every department. Then planning reduces the risk of uncertainty. Now in planning, we are anticipating the future. We cannot change the future, but we can anticipate the future and be prepared for it. So planning actually helps the manager to look ahead and anticipate the changes that might take place and be prepared for it. That is why planning is very important, because it reduces the risk of uncertainty. That is why they say failing to plan is planning to fail. Then planning reduces overlapping and wasteful activities. Now in planning, the specific goals are set. Everybody knows exactly what he has to work. So this new worker who came to work, he was told that he has to make 10 units on machine number 5. So he knows exactly which machine he has to go and work and how many units he has to make. He will not go and start working on machine number 4, because there's clarity in thought and action. Everybody knows exactly what they have to do because plans have been made accordingly. And therefore, this avoids confusion and misunderstanding. And all the wasteful activities are automatically removed. Then planning promotes innovative ideas. Now, planning means setting targets, giving objectives. So then you start thinking of new ideas. For example, a salesman was given a target of selling 200 television sets in a particular area. Now that area got flooded. Due to rains, that area got flooded. Now people, they are sitting on the rooftop. There's no electricity. Who will buy television? So in that case, the salesman has to be creative. New ideas he has to think because he has to achieve his target. So can you think of any idea? Just crack your mind, crack your brain. See if you can come up with an idea. This is challenging. Yes, so what that salesman did was he changed his area. He changed his area to some other area where he could achieve that 200 TV target. So you have to keep on thinking of new and new ideas. Yeah, some of you might have been saying that along with the TV, give a radio free, but where will they keep the TV and where will they keep the radio? Because they're themselves sitting on the rooftop. They're leaving all their belongings and trying to move out from there. Who's going to buy a TV at this time? So planning promotes innovative ideas, means you can think of new and new ways of achieving the target that have been set for you in planning. So all the challenging activities, it makes the manager learn to grow and come up with new and innovative ideas. Then planning facilitates decision making. Remember in the feature we did that choice of alternatives. So only when you have alternatives that you can choose. So planning presupposes the existence of alternatives. So out of the alternatives you have to choose. Therefore, planning facilitates decision making. Let us say you're going for a party and you've got a number of dresses. Now you have to decide which dress to wear. You see all the dresses, this I have already worn, somebody has seen it, and this is too new, I kept it for my birthday, I'm going to wear it then only. This is not ironed. I'll wear this. This color goes well. I hope nobody else is wearing that color. So you choose one. That is, you're planning for the future. You're planning for the party that is going to be in the evening. So planning can be done only when there is choice. So planning actually is nothing but decision making. So what the manager does is he has to evaluate all the pros and cons of all the possible cases, and then he zeroes in on which plan he should implement. Then planning establishes standards for controlling. Now in planning, we set the standards, we set the goals, like a worker has to make 10 units. Now then we have to also see whether he's making it or not. If he's not making it, then what's the idea of making a plan? If he's not able to achieve it, you must be making plans regarding a timetable, that today I'm to study these many chapters, in the morning I'll get up and do this. But if you're not able to do that, then what's the idea of making that plan? So planning is important only when you can control it. And controlling is actually removing all the deviations because of which the target has not been achieved, and making sure that the plans are being achieved. So planning actually provides the standards for controlling. So if this worker who comes to work, you don't tell him how many units he has to make, and you say, okay, you start working on machine number 5, then whether he makes 5 units or 10 units, it should be acceptable to you because you never told him the number of units he has to make. What will you control if there was no standard set? So planning helps in setting the standards which are important for controlling. So therefore we can say that planning is the prerequisite for controlling. So now with that, we come to the case study, and it's a long one. It came in 2018. And here we have to see one of the functions of management, and we have to identify the features, okay? So in 2015, Naveen left his luxurious life in Mumbai, where he worked as a manager for Bluebirds. He shifted to Chhattisgarh to fulfill his grandmother's dream of converting the 25-acre ancestral land into a fertile land, okay? He set specific goals, which the activities to be performed. Okay, fine. It was difficult initially as no one trusted an urban youth telling farmers about farming. But when everything was discussed in detail, the farmers started taking interest. He wanted to ensure that the future events meet effectively the best interest of the company. Through sales forecasting, he prepared an annual plan for production and sales. Okay, points are coming up. He also found that the farmers grew only paddy, which was an activity for 3 or 4 months, and the land remained idle for 8-9 months. He not only identified but evaluated various alternatives through which the farms could be utilized for the remaining months of the year. Through correct forecast, foresight, and logical and systematic thinking based on analysis of all facts, all alternatives were examined and evaluated. He presented a plan to the farmers where after harvesting paddy, vegetables could be grown. Okay, I have seen a number of features. I'll give you a moment to recollect it, and then I'll share the answer with you. You can go about it in this way also. You can underline very lightly with a pencil in the paper itself so that you remember. Or alternatively, you can write down all the features in your answer sheet with a pencil, which you can rub later, and then see which feature it fulfills. Sometimes those features escape you. Okay, I'll share the answers. I hope you have the same answers with you. Yes, specific goals, future events, is forecasting future events, evaluate various alternatives, foresight and logical systematic thinking. So let us see. So planning focuses on achieving objectives because it's specific objectives. Then it's about the future. Then involves decision making, choice of alternatives, and it is a mental exercise, systematic thinking, etc. So this is how the case study has to be done. And that's it in this video. Thank you.